Everybody, and welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Form's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm Dan Illman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's coming up in this week's edition of Out of the Gate. Daily Racing Form handicappers Mike Beer, Matt Bernier, and I will take a look at the $12 million Dubai World Cup on Saturday at Meydan. We'll also take a look at two very important Kentucky Derby prep races, the Grade 1 Florida Derby, the Grade 2 UAE Derby. We'll also take a look at the Grade 1 Beholder Mile as racing returns to Santa Anita. David Aragona's Timeform U.S. Spotlight looks for value on the Florida Derby undercard, while Craig Milkowski's Timeform U.S. Pace Projector segment focuses on the Florida Derby itself. We also have best bets and lots more, so let's break Out of the Gate. Horses from all across the globe converge on Meydan for the Group 1 $12 million Dubai World Cup on Saturday. Let's take a look at this big, bulky, and competitive field running a mile and a quarter. It's carded as race number 9, and for expanded stakes previews of many of the major races all weekend long, whether it be at Meydan, Gulfstream, or Santa Anita, head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Matt, North America lost his chance at the start of last year's Dubai World Cup. He has come back in roaring form since then, and his game is speed, and that's where you want to be over the surface, right?
Yeah, I think if he broke alertly, he would have won last year's World Cup. Unfortunately, he didn't. They put him away after that. They bring him back here for this Meydan sort of carnival. We're going to look at his most recent run. This is absolutely burying a field, a pretty decent field in the Al Maktoum Challenge Round 2. He goes out there, and you're right, Dan, his game is speed. You know where he's going to be early on, forwardly placed, and you brought it up. Meydan, there's a heck of a lot worse place to be than out there on the front end. I think you just go and you say, come and catch me. I know there's some nice, talented horses in here, but I think if this horse breaks alertly, I think he's got a big chance. This distance shouldn't be an issue for him.
Mike, another horse that has been dominant during the Dubai Racing Carnival is the number 2, Capizzano, and he answered a big question last time out. That was whether he could get the mile and a quarter. His game, like that of North America, is speed, and they are breaking right next door to each other. Are you worried about the possibility of a prolonged speed duel?
Yeah, of course. I don't think he can really get hooked up and win this race. We'll see how that all plays out. My take on this race is sort of twofold. I mean, I don't really have any idea how they're going to bet it. But I suspect the odds at post time will be a lot different than the available morning line that has Matt's pick and my pick as the two favorites in here. I just don't see it really happening that way, at least in North America. And I don't like the American horses that are really shipping over there all that much. So I wanted somebody else. Capizzano, we'll look at his most recent race. This is round 3 of the Maktoum Challenge. He went right to the front. Thunder Snow, you can see in second right there, who had a really nice trip tracking in behind him. Just can't get to him. You're going to see Thunder Snow get tired here first off the layoff. Maybe he could make it closer this time, but Capizzano looks to me like a horse who his form early on was spotty at best, but he has a nice pedigree, and he feels like a horse to me who's just really putting it all together now. He's won 3 in a row, really impressively. He's got an inside draw here. Maybe he can get to the front and take a 4th in a row.
I'm concerned that there is going to be a pace battle in here. Capizzano, North America, last year's winner Thunder Snow is going to have to hustle from an outside post position, and I want a horse that can sit in mid-pack and finish. The American contingent has a lot of closers. They have Gunnevera. They've got Yoshida. Seeking the Soul is not necessarily a true closer, and I think if he's hustled into the race a little bit earlier, he can sit in mid-pack and take advantage of the fast pace. He is good enough to be a Grade 1 winner at 9 furlongs. Let's take a look at his performance in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile 2 starts back. He got stopped a little bit on the turn. He wasn't going to beat City of Light that day. City of Light's just superior to Seeking the Soul, but he was very game to finish second, and he came out of this effort to run in the Pegasus World Cup. And again, he got jammed up a little bit on the turn, and again, he was second to City of Light, who was just a better horse than Seeking the Soul. He's supposedly training well as Seeking the Soul at Dubai for trainer Dallas Stewart. I think he can get the mile and a quarter with the right trip and setup. Hoping for a fast pace. Seeking the Soul 7-1 on the morning line. He'll be my top selection in the Dubai World Cup. Let's go back to the States. The Florida Derby, a very important Kentucky Derby prep. Let's throw up the field for Saturday's DRF Bets race of the day. It is the Grade 1 $1 million Florida Derby, obviously for 3-year-olds going 1 1/8, hoping to get those valuable Kentucky Derby qualifying points. You can access free formulator past performances for this race on the Race of the Day event page at drf.com, and for expanded stakes previews of the Florida Derby and many of the other major races all weekend long, head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Mike, Code of Honor, last year's Champagne runner-up, got back to form last time out in the Fountain of Youth. He got a great ride from John Velasquez. He got a great pace scenario. He might get another good setup here.
Yeah, he had a lot of things go well for him in the Fountain of Youth, but if nothing else, it was nice to see him sort of bounce back off of a disappointing 3-year-old debut in the Macho Man. I mean, he had so many things go right for him last time, though, Dan, and the fact that he was a really good price that day and is going to be probably a fraction of that on Saturday, those things kind of made me want to take a look against him. And also just the fact that even with that great trip and perfect pace set up last time, I didn't think he finished all that strong. I'm a little worried about him at 1 1/8.
Matt Bourbon War was getting to the winner last time out in the Fountain of Youth. It took him a little while to change leads in the stretch, but once he did, he came rolling on home and he galloped out past the winner. He might really appreciate this 1 1/8, especially if the pace is hot.
Yeah, he's the kind of horse that I do wonder if you're trying to play a horse going forward, whether it's for the Kentucky Derby or any of those longer races, maybe it's him. You brought up the late lead change. I think he's just a little bit green still, figuring some things out, but the talent is very obviously there. My only sort of reservation with him here in this spot, the pace situation, maybe it's going to be a spirited one, but I think there's going to be one horse all by his lonesome out there.
And that horse might be the one to beat. The beaten favorite of the Fountain of Youth, the impressive debut winner, that being the #1 Hidden Scroll, Mike. He's going to be tough to catch if he gets away early.
Yeah, it feels like breaking from the rail, too. He should just go right to the lead in here. We'll put the replay up now so we can just see all these horses that we're talking about as they turn into the stretch. Hidden Scroll is on the lead, but he's already tired after dueling a fast pace. He actually ran quite well in this race. I think an overlooked aspect of the Fountain of Youth is that he didn't break great in that race, and I think it really put Joel Rosario in a really tough spot. All in all, not a bad performance for this horse. I think he's going to be tough in this race, guys.
Hey, look, that was his first time going 2 turns, first time against winners. There were a number of things working against him, and the fact that he wasn't totally embarrassed at the end when anybody else that was remotely close to that pace was up the track, I think it just goes to show how good that run actually was. And again, I think it might be a fast pace here on Saturday, but I think he's going to be the one out there by himself.
I'm with you guys. I think he breaks. I think he goes right to the front. Mike mentioned that he got bumped at the start of the Fountain of Youth, and then he got hooked up in a prolonged pace battle with a long shot, but a long shot that's not a bad horse at all, a horse that turned back in distance and ended up winning the Grade 2 Hutchison. This time around, I think the pace pressure isn't as good as Gladiator King, the horse that Hidden Scroll had to duel with last time. I think he's in front turning into the stretch, and we're going to find out if the hype is for real with Hidden Scroll in the Florida Derby. We all pick him on top. I'm interested to see where Craig Milkowski goes in the Florida Derby. He analyzes the race with the Timeform US Pace Projector.
Hi, this is Craig Milkowski of Timeform US for this week's edition of Out of the Gate. In my Pace Projector segment this week, I've chosen to take a look at the Florida Derby, the Grade 1 race being run as the 14th race on a big card Saturday at Gulfstream Park. And it features a big field of 11, and is usually the case with these 3-year-old races that offer points for the Kentucky Derby. The Pace Projector feels the pace is going to be fast in here. You can see on the preview page some of the reason for that. I've highlighted the horses that are listed as speed horses or trackers. And of particular note is Hidden Scroll, who you can see his 150 early speed rating is just off the charts. I mean, you often won't even see a rating like that in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, as my partner at Timeform US, David Aragona, has pointed out. And I mean, it's just a massive rating. He's only run twice, so that's likely to come down as he runs longer distances and he learns to rate a little more, draws a little favorable pace scenarios, but it's just huge, and he's shown a whole lot of speed. Let's take a closer look at that Pace Projector, where I've highlighted him and the other horse, #7, Maximum Security. I have the red boxes around them. And those are the two horses in here shown with the Timeform US running style of speed. And that's a big part of why it's a fast pace. I've also made note of 4 other horses in here listed as tracker. That's also a component of whether we flag a race as fast pace or if it, we think it's going to favor horses on or near the early lead. And the last thing I want to note is that you see the little note in the bottom where the 11 horse, which is Garter and Tie, is taking blinkers off for this race. We always note blinkers on, blinkers off, and if there's horses that don't quite fit on the pace projector, we'll note it there as well. Next, I just want to kind of go through the 5 horses that I think are going to take the bulk of the action in here and discuss them a little bit from a pace perspective. And we'll start with number 1, Hidden Scroll. I already talked about how fast he's been. He dueled with a sprinter who came back to win the Swale Stakes last weekend. He was able to put that one away easily, as that one was way out of his league at that distance and going around 2 turns. But he still had to run way too fast, and I was hoping he would draw a spot where he might be able to show he can rate a little more. But the rail is going to be a tough spot to do that from, I do believe. We'll see what the tactics are of the rider, but I think that casts enough doubt on me that though I think he's a very talented horse, probably the most talented in this field, that I'm going to lean elsewhere for my selection. It won't surprise me if he romps, but he's one I'm just at a low price. He's probably going to be 2 to 1 or less. I'm not that interested in. The other speed horse that I mentioned briefly was Maximum Security. He's the 7 horse on that pace projector, and he's had romping wins in all 3 of his starts. But this is one I'm really against in here for a couple reasons. First, this is just a huge step up in class. You can see his race ratings on the left side of his past performances. None of them have even hit the triple-digit mark, where I think you're going to need, at the bare minimum, a 115, probably a 120 to win this race. And in addition to the huge class hike, he's stepping up in distance by a full 2 furlongs. He's yet to run faster than 7 furlongs. So I think he's a good story coming out of the maiden claimer for Jason Service. Kind of snuck one by everybody there. But, he's getting a bit ambitious here. And if he beats me, he does. But this is one I don't like at all. Next, I'm going to discuss Harvey Wallbanger. He's the one that won the Grade 2 Holy Bull Stakes back in early February. And he had a similar setup to what we expect here, where the pace was really fast. He was able to lay back, and at big odds, he got up, I think he paid $60. He was able to win. The problem with him is that despite the fact that he does expect to be favored by the paces, I just don't think he's talented enough against this group. His Timeform US speed figures are lacking. 104 last out. It's going to need a big jump to make him a contender here. It wouldn't shock me if he gets in the try in the Super, but as a win contender, I'm going to go and dismiss him. That brings us to another closer, which is Bourbon War. And he's kind of similar in style, though he's shown a little more talent than Harvey Wallbanger, in my opinion. He got up for second in the Fountain of Youth that we were talking about with Hidden Scroll. He was closing nice. He was getting to the winner, Code of Honor, who we're going to see in just a second. He was getting to him a little bit late, but, he did get a great setup. He's improving each time out. He started 103, and he's kind of gradually working his speed figures up as he stretches out in distance. So he's another one. It won't surprise me if he wins. I do think he's a contender in here and very dangerous. But at what will be a fairly shortish price, probably 7 to 2 on the morning line, probably around that or a little lower, I am going to look to the winner of the Fountain Youth, and that was Code of Honor. It could be argued that Code of Honor did have a perfect trip in the Fountain Youth. He was way off that fast pace. He saved a lot of ground. He got through an opening, and he was able to get, hold off Bourbon War late. But the reason that I like him, I don't usually like to bet horses coming out of great trip wins, is just that he's very versatile. He's able to he has tractable speed. And he won his maiden race wire to wire. He's shown he can close. He broke bad in the Champagne. Had to drop back way near the back of the field. Got up for second that day behind very fast Complexity at the time. So I think the versatility is really going to play a big role for him in here. And that's why I'm going with Code of Honor as my pick for this week's Florida Derby. That's it for my segment on Out of the Gate, and I'll see you again next week.
Are you a horse player looking to raise your game? For over 120 years, expert handicappers have relied on Daily Racing Form as their must-have source for news and data, featuring exclusive buyer speed figures, Timeform US pace figures, and integrated replays. DRF Formulator is the most powerful handicapping tool on the market today. Use what the pros use. Go to drf.com/formulator and enter code DRFTV to get your first card free. drf.com. Raise your game.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's throw up the field for race number 5 at Meydan on Saturday. It is the Group 2 $2.5 million UAE Derby at 1 3/16 Kentucky Derby qualifying points on the line. For expanded stakes previews of this race and many more, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Matt, the nation of Japan got a big thrill a couple of years ago in this race when Epicaris took him all the way down to the wire, only to get pipped by Thunder Snow. They're bringing back a pretty talented horse in Dermalouv.
Yeah, who knows if he's quite as good as Epicaris was, because unfortunately we never got to see Epicaris really flourish to his full potential, but he was good when he was right. This horse, who knows if he's going to quite be that good, but I thought his return effort in Hyacinth, we'll take a look at that right now. I thought there was enough to at least think that perhaps you're going to get a forward move here. You see him in and amongst horses toward the back there. He's not going to be able to run down two horses that were much more forwardly placed throughout, but I thought it was a nice enough sort of starting off point. You look at the time form ratings that he's earned, late as a 2-year-old, and even in this race here, makes him a fringe contender. I think he fits in here relatively well. The distance I don't think is going to be a major issue, although you see Pyro on top and understandably you get a little bit concerned. It just, I don't know. I feel like there's a real scenario where he takes a forward step here, and to be frank, I don't know that I love anybody else at a shorter price.
That was a real promising effort. The winner of that race, Oval Ace, is undefeated. The runner-up had showed a lot of promise in his previous start, and in the race before that, Dermalouv was just flying at the end to just miss. It'll be very interesting to see how he stretches out in the UAE Derby. Mike, your top selection in this race is going to be a big price, but he has proven form over the surface, just has a lousy post.
Yeah, I like that about him, that he does have proven form here, and he ran pretty well 2 starts back. To be honest, when I went through this field, Dan, I was covered in confusion. I didn't really know who I liked in this race. But Manguzzi, here's what I like about the number 14 Manguzzi. His race 2 starts back at this distance was actually a really nice effort, and of his last 3 starts, it's the only time, to me, he got even a reasonable trip in his races. His race 3 starts back where he was second to a horse he'll face again in here. He was wide every step of the way. His race last time where he was third, again, the 2 horses who were back in this race, he was wide every step of the way. And this race right here we're looking at, he got a good trip. He opened up on this field around the second turn, and he's going to hold off a pretty nice horse at the end, too. This was a good effort. I think an effort that gives him a chance in here. It's up to his rider to give him just a reasonable trip from a tough post. He's going to be a big price in here.
American-based horses have not exactly flourished in the UAE Derby in past years, but I'm going to give Peter Miller a chance with the number 8 Gray Magician. This horse, when he was with the low-profile Hector Palmer barn, this horse was 3-1 against Improbable in a maiden race at Santa Anita. He finished 3rd that day. He was privately purchased by an outfit that includes sharp owner Gary Barber, and he was very, very impressive, winning his maiden in his very next start at Del Mar. I liked him in the Sham in his start after that. He really didn't do too much. Beaten 3 lengths. They put blinkers on in his 2 most recent races, including this performance, the Miracle Wood Stakes. And you might be saying, listen, this is just a little stakes race at Laurel, but the winner, Always Mining, is in very sharp form. He's been dominating horses left and right at Laurel. 3 horses have already come out of this race to win. Miller's going to take the blinkers off. This horse has had some success without blinkers, as I've mentioned in the past, and he does have good speed. We have seen in years past horses go to the front and they forget to stop over this track. I think Joel Rosario is going to be aggressive with Gray Magician, and we'll see how far he can take him. He's 15-1 on the morning line and should offer a little bit of value. Let's get back to the stakes. Good to have racing back at Santa Anita. The Grade 1 Beholder Mile. Very intriguing matchup with some salty fillies and mares. Let's take a peek at the Grade 1 Beholder Mile at Santa Anita on Saturday afternoon. Carded as race number 9. $400,000 is the purse. For expanded stakes previews of many of the major races all weekend long, we cover them horse by horse. Visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Matt, Marley's Freedom has just been a revelation since being turned over to Bob Baffert. The only loss since being in Baffert's care came in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. sprint, and you could make the argument that with a better trip, she wins that race.
I think she was the best in that race that day, and unfortunately, she broke a little bit slow, a couple different things. She was wider than wide. It didn't work out, but if she had won that race, she'd be on a 7-race winning streak, and I just have a hard time getting past the form that she's in. We're going to go back to her most recent run. This is the Santa Monica. You're going to see a couple of common opponents in there. Down on the inside, you've got Selcourt, and in the purple silks in between, you've got Mopatism coming. I can understand anyone that looks at Marley's Freedom and says at a short price, she's going to be going 2 turns for the first time. Maybe that's enough that's going to get her beat, and this admittedly was a little bit more workmanlike than I would have liked to have seen, but that was her first start and a little bit of a layoff. I think she's going to take a step forward here. The mile shouldn't be an issue. Again, the 2-turn configuration, I won't argue with anyone, but I just think she's the best horse.
Mike, Paradise Woods is a multiple Grade 1 stakes winner. On her very best day, she certainly fits with these horses. She was in that race. It was her first start off of a lengthy layoff. She tracked, she tired, she might have needed the race. I know you've always thought that she is at her best when she's able to make the front. How can she make the front in here with Selcourt inside of her?
Because she's a fast horse, and if they decide they want the lead, I think she can get it. I certainly don't understand for a lot of her career that they've just decided not to really try and make the front with her and try and take up tracking positions. I don't think it really works that well for her. Now listen, maybe she just can't run anymore. That's certainly a possibility, and it's something I'm worried about. But in this spot, I'm just willing to give her one more chance. I think they need to send her to the front and try and wire this field. I know Selcourt's fast to her inside. Selcourt's not getting a mile in here. So I think they should just go and try and make Selcourt take a seat. I'm not way against Marley's Freedom in this race. I just wasn't blown away by her last win, and I'm not so sure that she towers over the competition here. Paradise Woods, with her best race on the lead, can beat this field.
And she's going to be a price based on her recent form. Do we go back to the La Brea and take a look at her race back in 2017? This is how good she is. Let's watch this performance. You got Unique Bella in here. It took a mare of this quality to run down Paradise Woods, and you can argue that this race at 7 furlongs, way back during her 3-year-old season, was a little bit short for her. She has done her best running around 2 turns. If she can get back to this form, she is a very dangerous contender in this race. We already talked about Marley's Freedom. She's sharp. We've already talked about Paradise Woods. She's classy. I think this race sets up, though, for Mopatism, because I think there is a good chance that Selcourt and Paradise Woods and maybe another horse like Just a Smidge can hook up in the early portion of this race, and that could set things up for Mopatism. We just saw Mopatism finish 3rd in the Grade 2 Santa Monica going 7 furlongs. That distance is just a little bit short for her. A mile is her game, and if you go back in her form prior to that last race, she is completely dirtied up. A turf race, throw it out. In the Breeders' Cup Distaff, way too tough, throw it out. In against a late, way too tough, throw it out. This competition, this distance, this pace scenario, and best of all, this price works out well. I'm going to give Mopatism a chance. She doesn't win very often, but maybe she found the right spot on Saturday. Let's head on over to David Aragona's Timeform US Spotlight. This one's looking for some value at Gulfstream Park on the Florida Derby undercard.
Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona with this week's Timeform US Spotlight. There's an excellent card of racing on Saturday at Gulfstream Park, topped by the Florida Derby. And while there are plenty of stakes races that are intriguing on the undercard, I want to take a look at an allowance race that interests me. It goes as race 11. It's at 7 furlongs for non-winners of 1 horses other than, with an optional claiming price of $25,000, though it's really just a straight allowance race because only 1 horse is in for that optional claiming price. It's a wide open field of 11 runners. As you see based on the morning line, there's no clear-cut favorite. And I want to just jump right in by looking at the Timeform US Pace Projector because I think there are some interesting things to discuss in this race from a pace perspective. You see that red bar indicating that this race is likely to feature a fast pace, but I think there are some reservations that you need to have about that characterization. The number 9 horse Articulator is likely to be in front because you see in the Timeform US PPs his running style is listed as a speed, so and his early pace rating is the highest in the race, so he is likely to be out towards the front of the pack. But one of the reasons why the pace projector is predicting a fast pace is because there are enough horses with running styles to make that the case. Another horse that has a speed running style is the number 7, the Gospel of John, based on her prior races. However, she set much slower paces in those races, so her early pace rating is not that fast compared to this classier field, and you see her placed towards the back of the pack. So the fact that the pace projector is giving that fast pace characterization based on a horse that's going to be towards the back of the pack makes me somewhat skeptical that this race actually will feature a fast pace, and I'm not so against the horses that are going to be placed towards the front of the pack. Taking a look at the contenders, the number 5 is Restoring Hope, and while he's the 9-2 second choice on the morning line, I could see this horse going off as the favorite. He's obviously the class of the field coming out of last year's Belmont Stakes. He was never a factor that day after showing a little bit of speed and getting ranked into the first turn. He just backed up readily and hasn't been seen since then. He's switching out of Bob Baffert's barn and making his first start for Jason Service. The Service barn is obviously dangerous off trainer switches, though I am a little bit skeptical if this horse can recapture his best form for Bob Baffert, because I never like to see trainer switches away from Baffert, given how well he does with his horses. I'm also somewhat skeptical that this horse is going to be at his best going 7 furlongs. He's kind of this larger, lankier horse that I think is really a true routing type, and I'm just not sure he really has the speed to win going this short. Jason Service is known to inject more speed into his horses off a claim or a trainer switch, so perhaps he's going to be more forwardly placed than he has been in prior races. I'm just not sure this is one that I really want to take at a relatively short price. I have similar feelings about the number 4, Rock Doc. He's a bigger price in the morning line, but he's another horse that deserves some consideration off his very high 119 time form US speed figure in his prior start. The problem is that number came all the way back in June of last year against New York Breds, and his prior form doesn't quite make him one of the top contenders in this race. I was surprised he got bet down to 3-1 in that June allowance race. He just seemed really well meant that day, and he hasn't been seen since then. I'm skeptical that he can get back to his best race off the layoff, and I think he's one that I want to be slightly against in this race. The 2 horses that interest me most are drawn towards the outside, and they're both speed runners. One is the number 9, the aforementioned Articulator, who's supposed to be the early leader in this race. He's a difficult horse to gauge because his 3 starts since being claimed by Jorge Navarro are all very strong, but the race 2 back was really the best one that he's run because he's had a very fast pace against horses like Magic Tapit and Central Command, who ran a pair of very fast speed figures, finishing 1st and 2nd in that race. He came back in the slop last time while his time form US speed figure was 1 point higher than the prior race. I thought he was really supposed to win that race. He was the 3-5 favorite, and he just had no excuse to get run down in the final quarter mile. He's a horse that I'm a little bit skeptical of going to 7 furlongs because he has so much speed, and he does have a tendency to sometimes go too fast on the front end. I'm just not sure he's going to get the distance, though I would use him underneath given his tendency to finish 2nd and 3rd. My top pick in this race is the number 11, Candygram. If you might remember, this is a horse that I highlighted on my Horses to Watch segment based on his trip last time. I thought he ran very well in that March 3rd race, coming off a long layoff. If you watch the start, he was a little bit, he was just off awkwardly. He didn't really break that slowly, maybe about a half length behind the field, but he quickly got into the race after that and just found himself in a pocket, chasing a very fast pace. He was trying to make a move coming to the quarter pole, but just couldn't quite get outside of runners, was stuck inside, had to angle down towards the rail to make his run through the stretch in a race that featured a significant outside flow. All of the horses that were successful in that March 3rd allowance race were making outside moves from well off the pace. The field basically inverted coming to the wire, as horses that were towards the back of the pack early were the top 3 finishers. Candygram finished 7th that day, but he was relatively close at the wire, and I thought he was running on with some interest at the end after encountering traffic in upper stretch. This is a horse that I think is apt to take a step forward second off the layoff. Jimmy Jerkins does well second off the layoff. I like Manny Franco getting the ride, and I think he's drawn perfectly outside of the other speeds in this race, and he should work out a much better trip. 7 furlongs seems like an appropriate distance for him. He's 12-1 on the morning line. I'm not sure we'll get a price quite that high, but anything around 8-1 or higher is probably fair value on this horse. So I'm taking a shot with Candygram in race 11 on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. Now let's send it back to the studio.
Time for our best bet segment here on Out of the Gate. Mikey gave out a big winner last week at the Fairgrounds for your best bet with Core Beliefs. This horse isn't going to pay that kind of price, but boy, Catapult's been a little bit unlucky in his last couple.
I'm going to give you a little chalk this weekend. We'll see what price Catapult goes off at, but it can't be a big one. There is another Grade 1 turf winner in the field, though, so we'll see what happens in here. I like Catapult in this race. We're going to look at his most recent start. They shipped him to Gulfstream for the Pegasus World Cup turf. First of all, this distance is probably too far for him anyway, but this race got away from Joel Rosario a little bit. Catapult is a really difficult horse to ride sometimes, and if you don't keep him covered up, this is what happens. He just will pull you into the race. He's going way too early over a distance like this especially. He's going to take this race over still on the backstretch, and he's just going to get tired at the end. He still runs a creditable race in here, and I feel like he did sort of the same thing back in the Breeders' Cup Mile, where he got uncovered early, went way too soon, and ran an excellent second in that race. If he runs anything like that on Saturday, I think it'll just beat this field. Drayden Van Dyke's back aboard on Saturday, and he has to ride him like he rode Catapult last summer at Del Mar. Keep him covered up until they approach the stretch, then wheel him out and let him do his thing, because this horse kicks hard if he can stay covered up early and save that run for the stretch.
And really the key in this race is the pace, the Kilroe, because there doesn't seem to be a lot of confirmed speed. So it really is up to Drayden to, as Mike says, get him covered up and get him relaxed. We don't want him to be lit up and pulling and running on top of horses or getting to the outside and brushing. We want him to conserve his energy to the end. And that has not been a problem for your best bet, Matt. Caribou Club kicks like a mule.
Yeah, it's going to be an early Saturday morning bid out there at Meydan. The fourth race, the Alcaz Sprint. It's a straight 6 furlongs, and there's some nice horses in there. Stormy Liberal among some of them. There's some other really nice international runners. But Caribou Club, I just think he's been a bit of a revelation. Let's go back to his most recent run down the hill in the Hernandez. See him in those Glen Hill Silks. The reason that this straight 6 doesn't really bother me, this race down the hill at 6.5 furlongs, but he's proven at longer distances. He's proven at a flat mile. He's proven at a mile and a 16th. He won the Seabiscuit 2 starts back. And you're going to see, again, he's going to run down some good horses in there. You had Conquest Tsunami out there on the front. Stormy Liberal's going to try to go. But Caribou Club, I just think that this straight 6, it can be a little bit on the quirky side, but I think he's going to really take to it. And again, it's a Group 1. There's a lot of cash on the line. I initially thought he'd just stay at home for the Kilroe. I think it's a confident move that they send him out there. He's 15-1 on the morning line. I don't know if you believe that or not, but he's 15-1.
I'm a big fan of Kanthaka. I'm looking forward to seeing him return in race number 6 at Santa Anita on Saturday, the Grade 2 San Carlos Stakes. Let's go back to his most recent run, his first start against older horses in the Grade 2 Palos Verdes, and he just caught Roy H. going 6 furlongs. Roy H. is a 2-time Breeders' Cup Sprint winner, and Kanthaka was just out-sprinted early. He couldn't keep up with these horses. We see him easing out now, and he's going to come with a really good sustained run to get into second late while never threatening the champion Roy H. He galloped out great after this race, and he is now getting the 7 furlongs that he really wants in the San Carlos. No Roy H is in here. He's going to have to deal with horses like Axeman and St. Joe Bay. They're good horses, but they have speed, and maybe they'll set things up for Kanthaka. I think getting back to 7 furlongs could be key for him in the Grade 2 San Carlos Stakes. We thank you for watching Out of the Gate, and we urge you to follow all of DRF TV's latest offerings. Please follow on Twitter at DRF Video, and for the latest news and notes from America's Turf Authority Daily Racing Form, please follow on Twitter at DRF Inside Post. That's it for this week. Best of luck when your horse is great. Out of the Gate.